Hi there, it's me, a guy who totally knows what he's doing. I've spent 75 days in 2026 trying to make a game, and I want to tell you how it's going. When we last left off on day 50, I was recreating player abilities that I already had functioning before I switched to Godot from Game Maker. The player could find 3 different items to solve basic puzzles. The cloner tool lets you, clone things, and there was a laser gun and a bazooka too. I made an opening cutscene just to get the feel for it that let the player pick up a sword and fight some rosebud enemies and break out of the room. That was about it. So logically, I continued working on player abilities, right? I know what I'm doing? No. Okay, so hear me out. There's going to be a mall in this game someday, and I want to have a bunch of NPCs walking around. So naturally, I would have to make them at some point. Who cares that there's currently nothing to do in the game, that I have no core loop, that it has no objective or way to win or any of that fancy stuff that makes a game a game. I wanted to draw some NPCs, darn it. So, day 51, I drew a little guy to be the first NPC walking around the mall. Actually, I drew a bunch of pieces of a bunch of little guys and stitched them together into characters. By layering the body underneath of the clothes and hair and such, I can mix and match all the different parts to create a larger number of characters. I put together a small test project to swap out the parts and see the different combinations. Then I asked myself, what if I could change the colors of these parts without having to redraw them all? I could, and I knew how. The answer is shaders. For the casual, small brain, not game dev audience members out there, a shader is a bit of code that runs on the graphics, and it only affects the appearance of the game, rather than how the game runs. In other words, it's the complete opposite of what I need to be focusing on right now with my half-baked game idea. Shaders can do things like take a pixel that is completely black and turn it into, seafoam green. So with a simple color swap, I could make even more combinations for my NPCs. All I had to do was turn them grayscale. By reading the value of the different gray pixels, I can change them to predefined color palettes. I did some math to determine that I could make my sprites use 16 different values in grayscale, and then map those values to different colors. This is what the 16 colors in grayscale look like. Each one of these shades is a step up from the last that goes by a predictable amount that the shader can account for. Starting with pure black, we can label these colors 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And then make the matching color strip, labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. The shader looks at the value of each of the gray pixels and then swaps it out with a color one from the equivalent color strip. So I grayscaled the sprites and recolored them with code. I could randomly switch the colors, and surely that was going to be enough to satisfy me. There was no need for NPCs that could do more than that. I could go back to work on making things that would actually matter. One day later. Well, despite my best efforts to do something a little more productive, I have spent all day doing... So there was a nagging problem that I had when I stopped that night with the grayscale shader. The hair, which was on a different layer, casted a shadow onto the forehead, but the shadow had to be on the hair layer, meaning the hair layer had to have the color for the forehead's shadow. This meant one of two things. Either anytime I changed the color of the hair, I would have to know what the color of the skin was, or the shader would have to have 2 different layers to it. One for skin, and one for anything else. Then if a sprite, like say the hair or parts of the shirt, needed to use the skin color, they could just put that on a second layer. That led to the creation of this red and green monstrosity. Red is that first layer, for clothes and hair. Green is reserved for specifically the skin. So how does this work? Nobody asked. I'm going to say it anyway. This is the same concept as the grayscale color swap, but it's making use of 3 different color channels. If you didn't know, all colors on computers are made up of a red, green, and a blue channel. The values of these channels go from 0 to like 255, I think. All colors can be mapped to their red, green, and blue values. 0 red, 0 blue, and 0 green makes black. And if you max out each of them, you get pure white. If you max out just the red, then you get pure red. If you max out just the green, you get pure green, and so on and so forth. These red and green layers have 16 even steps in color value along the red and green channels, just like the grayscale one. Now, all of my sprites contain 2 different color ranges, one for skin and one for everything else. Now, with that tweak out of the way, I was surely done. I could get back to work on the player and put these NPCs to the side until they were needed, right? I mean, it would be crazy to say, start working on using the exact same shader system to allow the player to, customize their appearance. Not this early in the process of development, right? Right? Roll clip. I'm not really sure I want to go down that path because I don't know that I want to do this to the player character. You know? The player character is going to have so many sprites by the end that separating it out into individual layers, I don't know. That's going to be pretty rough. See? He agrees. I mean, the player would need to have portraits and everything to match their appearance. No, it's much better to have a fixed appearance for the player. Oh, come on! Day 57, I spent a whole week making it so the player can customize their appearance when I have much better things to be doing? Well, fine. Let's just get this out of the way. I want to get all the player abilities done and over with. The player abilities all require animation frames anyway. Might as well go back to every single one of my player sprites and split them apart into different layers. While I'm here, I can just draw a couple new hairstyles, a few shirt options. Doesn't matter what color they are, I can just recolor them in the shader anyway. So day 58, I have 180 different frames of animation for the player. But wait, the player can be big or small, so I get to do it all again. But wait, there's more. The small player has more abilities than the big player because they can hold weapons and they are supposed to be able to swim and crawl and whatever else. So while the big player has 180 frames of animation, the small version has 248. Don't forget the text portraits. My head is killing me. This footage is from day 59, just 3 days after I decided to redraw all the player sprites. It rotates. You can change between 4 shirts and control all the accent colors on the shirt. And the text portrait matches the colors you choose. Oh, and all of this is done inside of a test project, by the way, so guess what I get to do for the next week? I got to import all the animations. Every animation has 4 directions. Every direction has 6 layers for eyes, hair, shoes, skin, shirt, pants. Don't forget those. And every layer needs up to 8 keyframes. That comes out to, a lot of animation. This sped up footage of me adding those animations into Godot is about 30 minutes of work. It was only 3 of the types of animation. One for pushing things, one for getting hurt, and one for bending down to pick things up. It was day 67 before I was back to coding. 3 days later, I had made the abilities for 2 of those animations that I spent all that time working on. You could crawl through a hole, and you could swing a stick that you picked up, and it looked like crap. Worse than that, The move quick and break things approach had failed me once again. My code was now spaghetti. When I got back to work on day 71, all I could do was refactor my messy code, because it had been a month since I stopped working, and now I couldn't even tell what was going on. Darn. If you made it this far into the video, I just want to say thank you. And hopefully you understand that this incredibly unimpressive footage from my 75th day of work has a lot of work behind it. I wanted to put a cap on everything I did over the last 25 days, so I put the color swap shader in finally, and got to walk around as a different player character. Even though this is what it looks like to throw a pot right now, someday it'll get there. So thanks for joining me on this adventure. Here's some more footage of my dog, and I hope to see you before the end of the year when I finally hit day 100.